Hi everybody, I'm Mary Rose Feldman. I'm an artist and certified Zentangle teacher. Welcome to my studio. We're going to tangle together today and we're going to do a nice simple tangle that is one of my favorites. I always love doing this one and I can't wait to share it with you. But first, we've got to have our moment of gratitude. Most important beginning and most important ending of all of our creativity and Zentangle steps. That moment of gratitude, that moment of mindfulness, that breath, that confidence, that positive energy, super important when we create and approach our pen strokes and tangling. So just sit nice and tall, whatever's comfortable for you. I'm going to do a nice big stretch up. My shoulders are a little tight, so just rounding my shoulders, and I'm just going to wiggle my fingers a little bit. Just focus in on this moment. We bring all of our senses together when we have a moment of mindfulness. It's as simple as that. Hearing, smelling, seeing, feeling, all of it. Tasting, if you have a cup of coffee or tea, whatever you're drinking. And we're just acknowledging the space right now. Where are we sitting? How are we feeling? What conversations are we having with ourselves? No judgment, no problem solving. Just acknowledgement. Our affirmation right now: I have the strength to endure all failures and successes. Have your own moment of gratitude. Take as long as you need, pause the video, and come back when you're ready. Okay, there's our tile today, our affirmation card. A lot of people like to see that card. It's from my affirmation deck. That's always a good one to remember. Okay, so the tile we're doing today, I'm going to work on a phi tile, which is roughly 3 by 5, roughly. It's like 3 1/8 and by 5. Anything is fine, but the tangle that we're doing today is a feather tangle. And the reason I'm doing that, I don't know what order you're watching the free videos in, but I have a feather series coming up, and I thought I'd share a couple simple tangles to get you nice and warmed up for the feather series. If you have not seen the feather series come up, it is inspired by the quill. It is on my Teachable school, and these are the 4 feathers that we will be tangling in that course. So those are the 4 feathers. When you are done with that course, you will have 4 gorgeous feathers ready to be framed and proudly displayed in your home. The course, if you can't attend live, the classes are recorded. You'll have access to them for a year, probably more than a year for as long as I'm on Teachable, but a minimum of a year. And you, after today, you are ready to jump into this course. Anybody can do it. Beginners and experienced tanglers are all welcome. I will step you through all of the steps for all of the tiles. So today is a little nod to that feather series. We're going to do scroll feather, one of my absolute favorite tangles. Looks a bit complicated, is really super easy, and we're going to step it out right now. So grab a piece of paper. This is just practice right now. Piece of paper, and this is called scrolled feather. and it is by Helen Williams. So when you see me tell you a tangle and say who it's by, a tangle pattern in the Zentangle world, if you don't know, needs to only have 3, 4, maybe 5 pen strokes to get to the pattern. And then you repeat those 3 or 4 pen strokes over and over to create the pattern. Sometimes patterns need more than that. They need 10, 11, 12 steps. To us, that is not a tangle pattern because it removes us out of our mindfulness and takes us over a little bit into the art side of Zentangle inspired art, because there's more steps to remember. So in order for something to be what we call a tangle pattern, it needs to be 3, 4, maybe 5 simple pen strokes, and you do those in repetition. What happens is when we see patterns in the world and somebody looks at that pattern and breaks it down into those 3 or 4 pen strokes to make it a tangle pattern, we just honor them that they deconstructed the pattern. We recognize that they deconstructed this pattern for us. It's not a copyright, it's just a recognition and an honor that they took the time to break down the steps for us. So that's why I try to do my best to tell you the tangle pattern name and whoever broke it down into the steps for us. So thank you, Helen. Okay, so this is how this pattern works. We are going to do a fescue shape. Fescue is usually a curve with a little teardrop at the end. And what we are going to do is all of these fescue shapes must go towards each other. So if I have a line, all of the fescues must go towards that line. So this side curves towards the line, and this side curves towards the line. So you always want to think of that center, and your curve is going to curve towards that center line. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to do this a little bit at an angle to give myself some room. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a fescue that goes towards my center line's about here, goes towards my center line, and then I'm going to make that teardrop. I am going to do, now we're going to alternate sides. We're going to go left side, right side, left side, right side. When I start the next fescue, I'm coming up this stem maybe halfway. I'm going to do a nice takeoff. I'm going to curve to the right, and now this has to curve towards the center because my right side curves this way, my left side curves this way. So we're thinking of a center point right about there. You don't have to draw the line. I'm just putting it there for speaking, okay, for explaining this. Now, here's the trick. Did you see that I left a gap? We're going back to the left side now. My left side fescue starts here, takes off about the center point, travels between them, and then curves towards the center. Here's a gap. Now I've got to do a right side fescue. Take off here, go between the gap, curves towards the center. So these always curve towards each other. Here, go between the gap, and then as I get closer to the top, my fescues are going to get smaller. But notice I always start here and then I travel up high enough to end up with that flow. Okay, so the first one starts at the bottom, all the other ones start from the stem of the previous fescue. Okay, now it's easy. All we're going to do is on each fescue, we're going to start at the top and we're going to aura to the bottom. Maybe 2 or 3. So I want you to notice that I take off at the top and I aura. My next aura starts a little bit lower. Okay, because we want these to be a bit taller and skinnier. Now here it's going to get a little complicated. I'm going to aura. This one's easy. I'm going to start at the top of my fescue. I'm going to aura all the way down. I'm going to do another aura that takes off a little lower because I don't want it to grow up. I want it to be tall. And then maybe I'll do another one that takes off lower. So where I take off on those auras depends on how I want my shape. Okay, so those two are easy. Well, now look what happens. I'm going to aura this fescue, but when I come down, I have some interference. So I'm going to leave a little gap. I'm going to air draw and then continue down. Take off, leave a little gap. Now, I'm going to start up here. Let me do it and then I will explain. So I have the bend of my fescue right here. I could come in and do that. And then this one, my fescue teardrop didn't interfere. Sometimes I put that little line there, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I wait until later. Just kind of depends. But notice that I left a little sparkle gap. I didn't run my pen strokes right into everything. So now when I do this one, aura, it's just auraing that fescue and then leaving a little gap when you run into the feather branch below it. So it's fescues and auras. That's all it is. That's why I love it. Okay, and then once my aura touches this little point, so this little V point right here, that's my goal. Once my fescues, or once my auras come into that point, I stop. Here, they didn't even get to that point. Okay. Aura. Notice how my auras are traveling. Okay. So we had fescues all turned in facing each other, and then auras on the outside. And then the flare on this is just coming into the outside and making these little fescues that flow, always flowing upwards, just like a feather. They come from the outside. You can make them flare however you want. You get the idea. Okay, so that's the basic breakdown of scroll feather. Okay, so let's do this on our tile. And I want you to notice, I don't put a line there. If you need the line, you can go ahead and do it. I'm going to start at the corner and I'm just going to work my way up to the center. For this one, I'm going to start going towards the center, halfway up, going towards the center. Take off on the stem, go between the fescues, work your way up, just step by step, turning your tile. Okay, so that's the basic shape. And then you can go an aura. How many auras you do is completely up to you. I'm typically 2 or 3, depending on my spacing. And then as you aura, you're just going to draw behind with that little sparkle gap. And then go ahead and put in the wispies. How many little wispy fescues you put in is really up to you, as long as they look like they're flowing upward. Okay, so we're going to start to add a little bit of flair. If you need to pause me, go ahead, enjoy your pen strokes. I think I've said that before, but if I didn't, I'm going at my own pace for the size of the video. So I definitely don't want to rush you. Okay, so let's add some flair to this. And this is all personal preference. One thing I like to do is just give my fescues a little bit more weight at the top. So I switched to a thinner pen just to get these little auras in at the top with a little highlight. And you can do them over here too if you want. Like I said, these are all embellishments that are personal choice. That little gnat flying around trying to take class with us. Another thing I like to do at the top of my auras, wherever I have these really long, narrow V's, I like to do a little bit of rounding and line weight. So if you see I have that really deep V right there, I'm just getting my pen in there and thickening it up. If I were to show this to you really big, I'm essentially coming in here and doing a little curve and then filling that in. But in tiny spaces, it's a few flicks of the pen takes care of it. Okay. You can also do that line weight. I guess that's a little too far off. You can also do that line weight at the bottom. I sometimes do that, sometimes not. We're going to add shading there, so it's not as critical, but it's up to you. And then I will also pick and choose some to add some orbs. So if you see this feather comes down and this feather's here, I have this little gap. I'll pick and choose to add some orbs if there's space. I have a couple lines that are a little bit thin, so I'm going over them a little bit just to give them a little bit more weight to hold their place. And then, as we've done on some other videos, I'm just going to do my quick double border. Before we shade this out. So you can see this is a super cute quick feather. Yes, you can say it's Zentangle inspired art because it's a feather. My philosophy is that if I'm still working one pen stroke at a time, I'm doing a tangle, I have one pen color, whatever that pen color may be, and I'm not looking to make a realistic type feather, I'm just doing the tangle pattern, I still consider that mindful Zentangle. And I know that's probably not the norm, and there will be disagreements with that, and I'm okay with that. I think there could be multiple philosophies on that. But I also don't get hung up in the label. If you want to say this is Zentangle inspired art, I'm 100% on board with that. If you want to say this is mindful because we did a tangle pattern one stroke at a time, I'm totally on board with that. I have no judgment either way. That's the way I approach it. Okay. Get a couple little orbs up there. Okay, so let's add a little bit of shading. And where I shade is at the base of every feather pod, fescue pod, whatever you want to look at it. So I'm holding it not quite upside down, but I'm just getting it positioned for my graphite. So here's my feather pod, and I'm going to go at the base right there because I want to make these look woven together. Here's a feather pod. I'm going to go at the base there. So to avoid going back and forth, turning around so much, I'm going to do all the right sides. And then I'll turn and I'll do all the left sides. And then I'll pull up the graphite, but I'm going to leave the top bright. And here's a trick that I sometimes do. So where this fescue pod is going over this one, when I pull up my graphite, just with the graphite on the tortillon, I'll give a little bit right around where that goes over. So I'm not actually shading behind it, but I'm putting a little bit of contrast there. Same here. I'll pull this graphite up and I'm going to pull it up behind where that overlap is, just to pop it just a little bit. And you can actually get in there and shade around it if you want, but I tend to like the softer contrast there. And then don't forget to also shade your bottom one. If you're on a gray tile or Renaissance or any colored tile, this is a great place to pop with white chalk pencil. And then we'll put our graphite on that inside aura like we've done on a few other tiles. But if this is your first one with me, we have that double border on the outside. I'm just putting graphite on the inside of the inside border. Right up against that pen line. with my tortillon or your paper stump, or whatever you're using, we're just smudging the graphite. And for this, I'm going to pull that graphite in and really give me a hazy background. I think that's why I like this double border so much on a lot of my tiles. First of all, it's simple and quick, and sometimes I just like simple and quick. And I can pull this graphite in as far as I need to, depending on what I'm tangling. Like right here, I could pull that graphite down and just give myself a nice haze behind the top of my feather. And then, as always, hold it out with perspective and see if you can want to darken any areas. You can come back with your pencil and you can really darken that overlap to make it more dramatic. Make sure you fade it off. But for the most part, you can be done right there. Make sure you have your chop to honor the art that you happen to create. We don't sit down to make art when we tangle. We sit down to be mindful. We just happen to create really cool, unique art. And there's your feather, scrolled feather. All right, take a nice good deep breath. Moment of gratitude. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here, visiting my studio, tangling with me, and just overall making my day. It was great tangling with you, and I hope I see you again soon. Bye.